Hey, everybody, and welcome to Morehouse Metrology Matters. Today, I am speaking with Travis Gossman, and Travis can tell you a little bit about himself. Though, if you want to know a lot more, you can go back to the Sign podcast where Ryan, Egbert, Travis, and myself, the whole history behind what Travis does, where he is. So, just a little intro, Travis.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show today, Henry. I really appreciate the invite. Um, where to start? You want a little background in my metrology career? Is that what we're gonna start with then?
You talk with whatever you want about
All right,
to
all
talk
right. So
about.
that,
What we're going to get to is basically decision rules and the state of where industry is and talking
yeah,
about metrology and general life. But get to what you're doing because you're doing some mission, I would call them mission critical, uh, right, for your company.
yeah. The products that we manufacture here definitely. It's probably worthy also just to review a little bit of where I was at my
Hmm?
previous company. We were also in the mission critical field, right? So we built avionics and a lot of commercial products that go on airlines. So if you ever flow on practically any aircraft out there commercially, our products were on that plane, and that was the company was Rockwell Collins when I first started, and then it iterated through Collins Aerospace, and now they're part of the RTX conglomerate. So they're here in Cedar Rapids. That's where I live. And a couple of years ago, part of that big RTX conglomeration, Uncle Sam said, "And you got too many GPS product lines." So we separated that business unit, and that was purchased by BAE Systems. So that's where I am now. I jumped over, I guess you could say voluntarily, to BAE Systems about 3 years ago to run the calibration lab there. So they tapped me at first to be the lab manager, and that was a very small team. So chief cook and bottle washer was my title. And we realized pretty quickly early on that it was just going to take too much. So they separated that role. And now we have the personnel leadership side, which is done by a colleague of mine. I call him, even though I report to him. And then I take care of what I'll say are the technical operations. So the chief metrologist is what appears on my email signature, even though there's, a small lab. But
Hey,
that's where
hey,
we are today.
that's okay. There's big labs without chief metrologists, and I think you
Yeah.
deal with some of them, not to mention names. So Travis has been out NCSLI last year and now NCSLI this year with a rather interesting presentation on request. It's what we want to talk about with everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're requesting ISO IEC 17025 has requirements. Labs are accredited for these requirements, and yet uncertainty comes into play all of the time, and decision rules come into the play all of the time where people may or may not be following those requirements, yet they are accredited.
Yeah. So part of my job role when I first started as a metrology engineer was to review outside calibration suppliers, get them approved in our system. We keep a list of approved vendors, AVL, the approved vendor list. Some people know
Mm-hmm.
that term. And part of that was reviewing their ongoing performance. And it wasn't very soon after that I started that 17025 got rolled out in the 2007 version, I think was their first one. Does that sound right? I want to say 2007.
2005 was
Was it
the last one.
2005? Okay.
2005 had decision rules in section 5.10 as far as things go. And
Oh
then
yeah, how could we
we
forget?
had, and it was just basically that one section on 510.
5104.2.
510.4.2 had
Yeah.
that. Prior to that, we had another version which I do not remember, and then we had ISO Guide 25 prior to that. Someone, I remember
Yeah.
since I've been here, 2005 we lived by, and then of course 2017 we lived by, and we lived by the mass confusion caused by 2017, which really wasn't all that confusing when you figure out what they want to say. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
language is difficult. And
It
people in
is.
metrology know that probably more than anybody else because you get into arguments, like stupid arguments with people. Is it the and you learn during those too, but I'm trying to remember the last one. Systemic errors versus bias versus offset. You start looking at this and then you go to the VIM, and there's three definitions here, and they vary twice or just vary a little bit. So what do you call it? Do you call something a bias? Do you call it an offset?
Hmm.
Do you call it a measurement error? do you call it a yeah, these are fun things.
Yeah, I think you're really speaking to a broader issue too. We could fast forward the tape here a little bit. Some of the confusion that's involved with the decision rules that are out there today is just that there's a lack of standardized language. There's a lack of there is no standard that tells you this is how to make a proper decision rule. Though some of those are embedded in like ASTM documents, ANSI documents, material testing references, things like that. But there is no cohesive standards out there for metrology. Is that kind of what you were saying? Is that, there's disparaging
There's some
definitions and things like that?
there. Well, yeah, and if we start talking about people defining measurement uncertainty, that gets into play. It's
Yeah.
mainly on the decision rules, and
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of language, global specific risks. Now they're
Yep.
ISO 10012 is going to add average risk to it because we have to have another term. Test uncertainty ratio has been butchered so many times. People do not know if they're talking about TAR because there's two versions of TAR. One really closely does match TUR, and then another
Mm-hmm.
one does not. So JCGM 106 on decision rules then went in and just let's call it measurement capability index, which is what manufacturing
Yeah.
uses. And we really should align as separately. My opinions are we should align with manufacturing because a lot of people understand that, right? Why do we have to be different? I've sat on committees.
Yeah.
I know why people need to be different. You sit on committee and they sit there, well, let's do our own terms that define what we do. But you can really, all these statistics are statistics. I just don't see there that much variation if I'm calculating and using it
Mm-hmm.
right. Why do we even need the word TUR in our vocabulary?
Yeah, and this is a great discussion. If there was like a United Nations body of metrology, this would be on our 10-year roadmap, would be to, get cohesive standards aligned all the way from the top down around the world. That would be like our 10 to 20-year plan, right? Right
Yep.
now, I think we're just zooming in on how do we do this with just decision rules? How do we get this ironed out before we go maybe to the next level or the next confusing term?
Yeah, and there's a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
In general, and different standards. ISO 10012. If you've seen the draft of that, it's going to confuse everybody because you're going to have people
Yeah,
like
I have.
yes, so you're going to have people requesting ISO 10012 calibrations, and you're going to say, some labs are going to say, I'm 17025 compliant. I don't need to have to be 10012 compliant. And generally, people are going to get confused by it, where 17025 is superior. The 10012 committee wanted to put that in the standard. The people that write the standard, that can not write, the people that control the standard won't let them put that in. They keep deleting it out. So,
Mm-hmm.
there's a business game going on here, and there's a business game that goes on with committees. Like you mentioned, the ASTM standards and some of the other ones. Some standards are great
Yeah.
because the people that were in them and on the committees say this is so confusing. Let's make it better for people. And then there's some that are really politicking and saying our business does not want to do this, so let's write into the standard that we don't need to make a decision rule. And then guess what?
Yeah.
The ILAC G8 flowchart says, hey, this follow one of the guidance is follow the actual standard, which makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. If it's there,
yeah,
perhaps perhaps it makes sense. Perhaps it doesn't. Because if it contradicts
maybe.
17025 at that point, you don't want to advocate for it, right?
Yeah, and so many standards have glaring errors. So one of the assessors
Yeah.
did something at the A2LA actual, I forget what they call it, the Tech Forum or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TechCon, technical
TechCon now
conference.
was
Yeah.
Technical Forum. So they did something and said that it's hard for me to assess when something says a nominal, and back to your to talk about decision rules, when the standard says X should be a nominal 10 inches. How is that possible? Right? With no associated measurement uncertainty around it. So if we're working to a standard and somebody's using something that's 10.3, is that good enough? It's a nominal 10. Unless you put
Nominal
uncertainty
10.
around a statement, say it measures 10 inches.
Yeah. And so that also relates. I don't know if this is a jump for you or not. When somebody requests an ISO 17025 calibration, that's not enough. You have to have some more information than that. So whenever I see that, I just bristle. We haven't had that come through on any of our contracts yet. Uncle Sam is still warm and cozy with the Z540 series documents, thankfully. And so that's the world that we live in. But if I ever see that as a requirement on a contract, the next question is, how do you want us to take uncertainty into account when we make a conformity statement? That has to be a component of it. You can't just say, I need a 17025 compliant cal. That's not enough. I want a nominal 10-inch measurement. That's not enough.
And you should really have that discussion. Like, what do you want us to do?
Yeah.
And that's where your papers the papers and talks come into play, because you're having that discussion. You're telling people exactly what you want, and you're not getting it.
Yeah, great segue. So we really are, and I've made a lot of headway since we started up our brand new lab. When you, as a customer, have a requirement for your conformity statements and your decision rule, those have to be recorded on the purchase order. That's the legal binding document, the vehicle to get that into the hands of the calibration lab. If you try to put that on some other ancillary, like a traveler, print it off or put it in an email, it doesn't hold water. It's not legally binding at that point. So we worked very hard to make sure that all of those are on all of our purchase orders. Sounds great on paper, right? Well, the problem is we're starting to get a lot of labs don't see that. Like, the purchase order system it's not reviewed by technical people. And some of that's on us too, because we have folks who are running our request for quotes that aren't technical either. And so some of this technical information is probably lost in that chain. That's layer number one. Layer number two is we get some suppliers that have on their quotes, we refuse to do anything other than our standard decision rule. And if you send in your equipment to your customer, you're hereby agreeing to our default decision rule. I've seen that on at least one supplier so far, which completely shunts the contract review process, right? And I made a joke in my presentation last year. You get the Ford Model T color option at that point. Henry Ford was known for saying you can have any color you want as long as it's black.
Yep.
So, if you get to choose any decision rule you want as long as it's ours, is there really any contract review at that point? It really shunts the discussion.
That's a hard discussion to have, because you're looking at coding, you're looking at a lot of other things.
Yeah.
There's 13 plus decision rules that I could just spout off the top of my head. You could make up your own decision rules. The standard gave you the permission and the go ahead to say, hey, the requirements are adequately defined and understood. So you could say this is Travis's rule. And I'm like, well, under contract review, I could say, Travis, I have no clue what Travis's rule is. And you said, oh yeah, it's one I thought up 2 years ago in my bathroom and thought it would be good for every flight. And since we haven't
it's really easy. You take this and divide it by 0 and you come up with the right answer, right?
And since we haven't had a crash related to any of our parts in 2 years, I'm deeming Travis's rule to be the greatest rule that's ever been created.
In 2 years? Okay. Sounds reliable.
Well, that's when you created it. So
2 years ago. Okay.
2 years ago, your decision rules, Travis's rules, divide everything by 0, and thus
take your TUR divided by 0 times the square root of -5. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. As soon as you divide by 0, you're done anyway. So
yeah, I know. That's the absurdity I'm trying to point out.
Yeah, it is absurd, because if we don't understand, that's in section 7.1, but of this ISO 17025. But if we don't understand it, versus, like, I think they should have clarified things in this standard on pass. I'm told that G8 is gonna basically recommend, I think it's not out yet, but two pass. Either you go the shared risk is leaving, and shared risk is the one that Travis, I think you had the greatest email quote on that. Is basically you share the risk. It's simple acceptance, or it's a specific risk scenario where you're okay up to the tolerance limit, and at that tolerance, under not using any other statistics other than just that specific measured point, there's and you say it's good, there's a 50% chance that it's good or bad at
A
that
maximum
point.
of 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though
Yeah.
where you said, well, if it's arsenic and I think, do you remember your quote
I
on
remember
this?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The shared risk. So I'll finish the punchline there.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's
Finish it.
shared risk, you're asking me to drink the arsenic laced water and saying, we'll both share the risk of this. And I'm saying, well, what about you? Why aren't you drinking the water? But let's take that and extrapolate it. You're flying on airplanes too, guys. You really want to share this 50% risk that component that you just told me was intolerance is going on an airplane. Let's think about this. So I don't think companies understand what this shared risk actually means,
No.
except it was just, well, it's up to 50%, and here's hoping. It seems like an odd phrase anyway, shared risk. No, it's not.
Well, because we don't know. But then when we get into, we start knowing more about our measurement process and knowing that, hey, I've calibrated X number of these, 80% are always intolerance, 80% have really good end of period reliability, which basically means you take the number of calibrations failed divided by the total number of calibrations. So,
Mm-hmm.
or the number of passed divided by the total. So if 8 out of 10
The number
pass
of
every
passing.
year,
Yeah.
I have 80%. You can do it the other way, but it's easier
Yeah.
it's easier to define it as the out of the total, the number of passing divided by the total. So
Mm-hmm.
I have 80% end of reliability, and now I have another curve, and then you could say, hey, really, it's on the tolerance line, there is actually, looking at the population of instruments, there's less of that 50% chance when I look at the whole population. That's the
Right. So you're
simple
talking
way.
global risk
Yeah, the global.
versus bench or specific risk.
Well, yeah, if I want to define it, the easiest thing I could say would be like a Caitlin Clark or Steph Curry taking 3-point shots, right?
All right.
If they're taking a 3-point shot, it's either in or out, the first shot they take. But globally, when you look at how much
Yeah.
they practice and everything, and you start getting odds, they might have, before they even shoot, Travis and I might look at everything, and statistically, we can say there's an 80% chance that they're from the right hash that, or the right line, that it's gonna, the 3-pointer's gonna go in before they
Gotcha.
even
So
take a shot.
you're talking Bayesian statistics now, is that
Yep.
right? Where you have
Yep.
a priori knowledge.
Yep. We
Yeah.
absolutely have knowledge.
Last year at the conference, I got to sit down and have supper with Paul Reese and one of his colleagues, I forget his name, and he gave me a crash course on Bayesian statistics. I love sitting down with that guy. I walk away like 10 times smarter than when I started.
the frequentist versus the Bayesian.
Yes, and whether the sun was going to explode that day was that how that story goes? I forget exactly, but yeah, the random machine that can tell you whether the sun has exploded or not, because you won't know it for the next 17 minutes or whatever the speed of light takes to get from the sun. Yeah, but I can't finish the story, unfortunately, but that's the Bayesian statistics. You know something ahead of time about your instrument before you begin the calibration. Yeah, and that's by studying what it was in its past. And I like the EOPR method. The Z 540.3 handbook uses that in a lot of their charts, if you look up their guard banding strategies, of course.
Right.
I'm not sure where to take that in the terms of our discussion today, but the decision rules that we come up with, I'm trying to remember if I incorporate. I don't talk much about EOPR with my calibration suppliers. That's for our internal usage on developing things like, hey, are we calibrating at the right intervals or not?
Right. So the sun, if I remember correctly, we need Paul. This is the whole problem.
We need Paul.
Paul is
I'm going to phone
brilliant.
a friend.
Yeah, in this whole thing, because the Bayesian's going to assign a probability to something. In general, it's going to say, hey, there's a 1 in 10 billion chance that the sun is going to come up tomorrow based on this. Bayesian's going to say Steph Curry goes to that line, Caitlin Clark goes to the line, takes the 3-point shot. There's a 80% chance that the basket's going in, or whatever the number is, right? The frequentist is just on the sun is going to just refuse to say anything because it either is blown up or it hasn't. The probability doesn't apply.
And we simply don't know.
And we don't know.
Yeah.
So that one, I'm more of the Bayesian. You'll get these arguments on LinkedIn, which are sometimes funny, but and Paul needs to do it because Paul would have the craziest ones, right? The guy just is the walking encyclopedia of metrology, and he knows it. So there's other people out there that know things very well. There are people out there that
Hmm.
can quote things. Oh yeah, that discussion was given in 2004. I always jumping around a little bit because you're talking about ANSI Z540, that
Hmm.
standard. I always like the people when they were on those committees because you hear like friends with
Hmm.
Scott Mims and you'll hear stuff like I wish we wouldn't have done the decision rules in the way we did them in Z540.3 and then because they did a handbook after that was released I think in 2009 to
Something
explain it.
like that.
So
Yeah.
the standard comes out that talks about having a 2% probability of false accept, and then
Yeah.
no one knows what the heck that means except for the people that are on the committee and in the group and some others, which of course, but and
Yeah.
then so
But
they
the
have to do the
fallback is
standard.
there. The fallback is there. Just
Yeah,
if you can't calculate your 2% PFA, use 401 TUR. Oops, I
TUR.
misspoke.
Yep. Yeah, that's no that you're fine on all of that. Yeah, that's the
So here's a
fallback
great
position.
story. 2007 was my first year as being a metrology engineer. They sent myself and a couple others up to the NCSLI conference. I think it was in the Twin Cities, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that's the one
Uh,
where the bridge.
the
No.
bridge collapsed. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yep,
we
the
were all
bridge
at the
collapsed.
social outing that night at the Hooch Parlor, and all of us get word that a bridge has collapsed, and you better call your loved ones and tell them that you're okay. I didn't even own a cell phone at that point. It was 2007.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there we were at the conference. Sorry,
No, go
squirrel.
ahead.
And I'll never forget this. Dr. Howard Kastrup stood up, and the white paper that he had published was, "Here's how to comply with the requirements of Z540.3." And he stood in front of the auditorium and said, "Don't just make us estimate measurement uncertainty and then do nothing with it." And a room full of introverted, quiet engineers gave a round of applause. And I thought, how bizarre. I wonder what's going on here. Fast forward a few years, we still have this problem. And I get why the visceral response from the crowd. Like, yeah, we're doing all this hard work now to estimate uncertainty. And I say hard work. In some
Hmm.
instances, it's fairly easy. We have computer templates and it's embedded in a
Yep.
lot of software, for crying out loud. It's easy in some instances now. But all the work that went into that. And then we have what's called this simple acceptance rule. So here's where I'm going to tie it back to this conversation.
Great.
ILAC G8 advocates for using this what's called simple decision rule, and that is the definition up in the section of G8 just simply states this is where the acceptance tolerance is the same as the test tolerance, I think they call it.
Yep.
I've got
Sounds
G8 up
that
in
sounds
front of me
right.
here.
I'm
It's
going.
basically no guard banding. That's all it says. The
Yeah.
simple decision rule, there it is. A decision rule in which the acceptance limit is the same as the tolerance limit.
Hmm.
Means no guard banding. You're not shrinking those tolerances by any amount.
Nope.
Well, if you read the document, you understand you still have to take uncertainty into account. Now, it's a little obscure. I'll grant them that. And I was actually talking with one of the guys. I'm not going to release his name, but half your viewers can guess who this was, the guy that was on the writing committee for ILAC G8.
Hmm.
I had him on the phone. I was very honored to have some of his time, by the way. And he said, yeah, the definition there needed to be tightened up. And that's what they're going to try to do. Hopefully, that this isn't a promise, but the word on the street is that they're going to try to tighten up that definition so that simple acceptance doesn't get ill-defined. And here's how people are abusing it. We get to ignore uncertainty. Like, just wipe it off the table. Just report it. I shouldn't say wipe it off the table. That's the labs are just simply reporting the uncertainty associated with the test point. And if it appears in tolerance, it's a pass. If it appears out of tolerance, it's a fail. But the trouble there is it violates the definition of a decision rule. If you go switch over to ISO 17025,
Yep. 3.7.
3.7, you got it. It says this is how you take uncertainty into account. So the question to the lab is, how did you take uncertainty into account? By not taking uncertainty into account. It's a self-refuting statement. And so here we are now, years into this, and accreditation bodies have been allowing it. Assessors are actually, I just talked with a lab the other day, their assessor forced them to put that language on their certificate,
That's
and they didn't know
crazy.
why. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
that's a
Like they
bad
had to amend
that's
it.
a bad assessment. This
Well,
is
and I don't know
not.
all the details into it, but
No,
that was my
that's true.
response too. Is like, what's going on here, guys? This is wrong. We shouldn't be forcing labs to just default to this
Yeah,
this
you're right.
language.
We do not have the details on that because that could have gone
Yeah.
that the lab just had their uncertainty budgets could have looked good and they could have had no clue on they could have like I'm saying no clue on this or that and it might have been a recommendation that says hey is for you to pass your assessment this is where you are and you should do it.
Yeah.
I think it's deceiving because some people use this language that and they basically say W equals a decision rule was applied where W equals 0, which
Zero.
is the
Yeah.
same thing that you're saying here, but
Yeah.
someone that's not in the know says a decision rule was implied. And if we're switching to AI systems aren't the most brilliant systems in the world. I don't think they're going to get there for a long time where an
Really.
AI system if well, I think they'll get pretty far, but an AI system from what I know now is if you have it do your contract review or have something else and somebody used the language
Hmm.
a decision rule was applied, AI is probably going to say, yeah, it checked the box, right? Because it's just a
Yeah.
large language model that the language on the cert that you're presented says a decision rule was applied such that W equals 0. Until AI is trained that W equals 0, and somebody might have already trained it, it just depends what they come up with. Until it's actually trained that you have to type in the prompt and know to type in the prompt that, hey, I want you to do this. And I think AI can be used for a lot of good things. And one of them is contract
Yeah.
review. I don't know where the standard is on this.
That would be fabulous. Yes, if we could roll that out more broadly. Yeah.
Because if we had that language, we had everything. If you think of all the stuff, and I've had some discussions with people offline about it, and I some of them
Hmm.
we agree, and some of them we disagree. And the last one I think I've got more people that I asked that agree with me was someone that had said that hey, you should put on your PO that you expect the calibration to be done by the clause in there about technical people that are technically competent. And my argument is if the lab's accredited, we should not need to put in our purchase order that
Hmm.
someone
Technically competent people.
was technically competent that performed the calibration on our equipment. That just the whole point of
Yeah.
having the assessment is to verify your process and everything else. So
Yeah,
y-
but that's the same thing as the decision rule. What I
it
shouldn't
is
have to put on my purchase order that you can't ignore measurement uncertainty when you make a conformity statement, but
no,
here we are. The simple
yep,
decision rule is doing that. This, again, ill-defined simple decision rule.
right.
And
But
maybe
you
it's
could,
worth circling back around to that discussion. So ILAC G8 says use the simple decision rule, but that's if you're indirectly taking uncertainty into account, right?
yeah, yeah, there's pieces in there that people are not putting together, and then they have a table, and
Yeah.
the table is only one-sided, which is hard to get around. I had talked to, I'll mention the person, and it might be the same person you talked to, but I talked to Bob Stern a bit about this, who was one of the authors of it, and they were saying about the table that's in there, and I was arguing about tweaking the table and some of the
Hmm.
things because when you go to global risk, global always assumes that you have and there's other people. It's not just Bob. There's really people that are really good with statistics and know a bunch of other stuff. So I've nothing negative there, whatever. I think Bob did a great job with what he had and the graphic. But I was advocating to
Hmm.
say, hey, when you use global, there should be some more notes about end of period reliability in there. That a priori knowledge in the
Yeah.
tree because what people do is simple. Oh, I have a TUR of 4-1, and then they don't understand the TUR, what it is, what goes into it, and then we get these other discussions on is resolution included. Some people are saying, hey, did you substitute the repeatability of your instrument? And then they get into you send me. So Travis, BAE sends Morehouse a gauge for calibration. We're supposed to verify this gauge. We've never seen it before. Some people argue that not only that we need to take the resolution of your equipment into account, that we need to do at least 10 points repeated measurements on your device to put that in there too to meet the ILAC P14, I think 5.3 clause. So I've heard that. Look, I agree that the resolution of your device has to be in it. I don't know if we should be doing the 10 points repeatability study. That's one that I do not think we should be doing as a lab, and that somewhere someone's got to take that risk. To me, if you send something for us to Cal, we know our process, we know how good our machines are, equipment are, is the resolution of your device certainly counts against us if we're going to make a conformity assessment. And after that, where are you on this? Do you need to do repeatability measurements of does the lab that's doing the calibration need to do those extra repeatability measurements on your device, or is that something that you handle internally through your process?
Well, I just got to say, I'm glad that there's a leader of a company like yourself that actually can talk on these levels. You're getting into the finer nuts and bolts of measurement uncertainty, and I think this industry would be a really great place if these are the major discussion points that we're having. Because I would sit back and just let my hands go. I'd be in the back of the room just kind of nodding at that point, because I'm not a statistician. I'm not a full-fledged certified engineer. I have a 2-year associate's degree. I'm an electronics technician. Broke the paper ceiling a few years ago, and this has all just been OJT. So I don't have that in-depth understanding. I'm just trying to get us to comply with the standard.
Yep.
I'm trying to get my Cal certs in order in my lab, and I'm also worried about the risk that we're inducing in the industry. I had a phone call with another engineer at another company, and I was pushing back on some of their decision rules and their conformity statements. And he said, Travis, I just don't know where you're coming from. Well, let me be clear. These are the 3 things that I'm coming from. I don't think we're in compliance with the standard. We're not getting good Cal certs as BAE Systems, Cal Lab, and I think the rest of the industry is being put at risk because of the multiple factors all happening at the same time. It's kind of a perfect storm. And so that's my only intention. I'm not here to make a name for myself. If we can fix a few of these big items, I'll go back to my happy little lab and not get up and stand in front of a hostile crowd with 60 people wanting to tear me to shreds for saying stop using a simple decision rule. It's not my idea of a good time.
It's not. Talk more about that. It was my idea of a good time. I was at the presentation. I thought it was fantastic, and that's what I'm sitting here. And I'm in agreement with that. And you have the difference between this, and there's a John Berger wrote a book, Ways of Seeing, and a lot of people write different things on your perspectives, and you know what you know.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you could have a master's degree, be an excellent statistician, if your industry, again, if all you see is nuclear submarine latches all day, guess what's going to happen? You're probably going to be the world's most authoritative expert on nuclear submarine latches if you've devoted your life just to that. Yeah. And your bias is going to, you're not going to see the other pieces of that sub likely and what goes into all of them. You're probably going to make the assumption, because it applies to a nuclear submarine latch, that it's going to apply to other things somewhere else. And you're going to forget most of, your schooling is going to be used for that specific thing after so many years. So it's the lens that you're looking through things with, and different people have different lenses. And the goal is you want to hear everybody. So your lens specifically, that conversation was, hey, I'm requesting from major labs out there that are accredited stuff that's not too ridiculous. I'm requesting that the uncertainty is taken into account. I'm requesting things that follow under the Section 7 contract review stuff. It's not like you're requesting Travis's rule or something that we want to, I'm
requesting solid, published, verified decision rules. I refer to the Z540.3 handbook method 6. It's one of my favorites because I think it's a balanced approach. It doesn't drive up your probability of false reject. It keeps your PFA at a nice, reasonable level. But we're not asking for anything unreasonable. Here's a quick story for you, if I may. we recently just I'll keep it generic enough so as to not reveal the identity of the companies, but we purchased a number of test instruments from a company. This is a worldwide company. They have I want to say somewhere around 60 to 70,000 employees worldwide, and this is one of their major product lines. And we received it in several of these items, and I was reviewing the calibration certificate. Actually, we've got great technicians. First of all, I got 3 techs in the lab, and they do the first response. They do the first review of all these cal certs. And the one technician picked it up and said, something's not quite right here. And so he brought it over to me, and I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. The TURs are upside down. They're less than 1-to-1 by a lot. It was like 0.7-to-1 TUR, which means your uncertainty is wider than your unit under test.
Yeah.
Like,
so you really
this is
can't
absurd.
yeah, you get into a point where you're calling everything good because you're rejecting. Well, actually, I think it goes to a point. If it gets too bad, it goes to the point that you start calling everything good because you can't.
Well,
I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually, okay, so it depends on the scenario. If you have an instrument, let's just say you got a multimeter, and it's been in service for 5 years, and you've been sending it to vendor A, and then you switch over and send it to vendor B, and they provide you an upside down TUR. The probability of false accept starts to go the other direction when, as your TURs invert, because it's actually likely that you're not going to call it a pass. I might not be describing this properly, but I've seen the charts, and it actually starts to invert the further away that you get from upside down 1-to-1. But this scenario was a brand new instrument, and it was nominalized on that system of with uncertainties that were less than 1-to-1 with the accuracy of the instrument. So your actual error might be out of tolerance of the instrument, but it was nominalized to it and then sent to you and said, pass. In that scenario, your probability of false accept is greater than 50%. If you look at superimposing the uncertainty over your, thank you. I don't know if you can do that better than I can. I'm using my fingers here. If you superimpose your uncertainty over the tolerance of the instrument, you've actually got a tail sticking out above and below the tolerance. So your probability of false accept is actually greater than 50%. It's not by a lot. I actually modeled this in Dilip Shah's spreadsheet. But it does, again, in that instance where you're nominalizing it against a system that has very poor performance. Go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
I can, yeah.
Okay, so this is it. This is risk versus TUR from implementing strategies for risk mitigation. It's a Paul Rees paper. And yes,
I recognize this right away. This is Paul.
Test uncertainty ratios start to decline pretty rapid. This only takes it to 0. So as it's
Can I draw on your screen? I can't remember here. Let's see if I can.
I don't think you probably can't. I have to say.
Well, anyway, yeah. So that blue line there, you can see it actually starts to invert, goes back down again,
and it goes back down, which means your PFA. So you're saying you start at some point. You start saying everything is good because your uncertainty is so large. You're not rejecting anything, and that's when a TUR to 1-to-1. Of 0-to-1, it's somewhere in there. I wish he would have had the number, but if you look at this, and hopefully people that are online can see it, but so see, it's that red line that I just drew. It's somewhere in, what's it look like there? About 0.4.
0.4, yeah.
Somewhere in that 0.4 region where the PFA starts falling again, because you're all this room, right? It's so ridiculous. But what's interesting...
So here's me saying, I don't think it's too much to ask that we not perform calibrations when your TUR is less than 1-to-1. Is that too much to ask for?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the numbers are what, 0.76 or something. I don't know. I'm pulling them. I'm rectal extraction method with some faint memory somewhere that I killed a brain cell that I would have known. But yeah, there's somewhere that... Yeah, and it is around that 0.6 or some number. Like, see, there's your guys like where Jeff and Bob and all they would be able to, Howard Castrop, they'd be able to give you stuff absolutely immediately on that magic number. Though for the people out there listening, less than 1, it starts getting really dicey. really quickly, where you do not know that you confidently if you can say something's good or bad.
Yeah,
So
definitely
yeah,
agree with that.
and
But we don't have a standard that says you can't do that.
yeah,
So
well,
as I started to review more and more cal certs, I noticed this trend happening. Um, and it's not huge, but I get about 2 to 3 a year where the TURs are less than 1 to 1, and they're accredited.
yep.
So here we have a standard that doesn't disallow it. Is that, did I say that right? I used
No,
two
I think I
negatives.
think I think you're right. A standard that does not disallow TURs less than
TURs to
one to
go
one.
upside down. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that's a bad standard. It represents a high risk to us industries that are really worried about risk.
it does. And it's basically what does a lab have to do? Well, they have to buy better equipment. And in some cases, you're going to have one to ones. It's just going to,
Yeah,
it has to happen. If you're
some cases.
buying stuff
Yeah.
that is that good and the people, so what we're basically talking about is this ratio. I like measurement capability index because it's properly defined, but we're talking about the
Yeah.
ratio of the tolerance to the combined calibration, for lack of a better word, the expanded uncertainty of the measurement divided by the expanded uncertainty of the measurement process, which includes a bunch of things. And when this number goes upside down, that's the problem. But you might be doing a one. You might
Hmm.
have things I know about, like maybe Joseph Junction, like two labs with Joseph Junction. Who there's
I wish I had a
calibration.
Joseph Junction, but I
Yeah.
don't.
Though if you had one, then what?
But
Then
yeah,
it's
that'd be a good
a
example where it's,
yeah.
yeah.
It's like how do you calibrate?
Accelerometers is one.
Yep, yeah. So the best standards out there are not getting that much better. I mean, NIST is
Hmm.
probably governments are probably working on them to get them better. NIST always runs some
Sure.
really cool stuff about, hey, once we it gets really expensive once we chase the next decimal. And that is one thing I picked up that is fundamentally true in all of metrology, right? I want to make a
Yeah.
measurement. I want to make it good to 001 and say all the standards in the world now are good to 001, some arbitrarily, it could be whatever unit you want to talk about. But now I want
Yep.
to go to 0001. Guess what that involves? That involves a lot of expense, a lot of equipment, a lot of other things that all their uncertainties start compounding in. And then there's also a lot of research and development, somebody redefining this or doing
Hmm.
that or getting to the quantum. And maybe AI gets us there faster on some of this stuff if they can really model it.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's that buzz phrase again. See, I think
yeah.
we're running a little behind on the AI, but that's not within the core of our discussion here today.
No, it's not the core. It's just something that's out there. I like it. I think
Yeah. Was that
metrology, yeah.
a quick sidestep? There was a committee meeting that I was on not too long ago, and I think it was you and somebody in the committee said, "Hey Henry, why don't you go investigate this and come back with like a
Yeah, they did.
position on AI?"
Yeah.
I'll never forget your response. It was something like, "Well, I could, but by the time I get back to you, it's going to be obsolete."
It's obsolete.
I could just hear a pin drop in the room going, "Oh wow, that's how fast the technology is moving."
It is how
Dang.
fast it's moving because now I know Greg, our buddy Greg, he uses Grok. He loves it.
Yeah.
And depending what you want to do, I'm more of a chat GPT. Now, Perplexity, if you want to do deep research. I'm also
You're
in
making me
the,
very sad because I'm not allowed to use external facing
oh,
AIs. We have our own
oh,
internal, by the way.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I do have access, but it's just not to the biggies.
labs have it. And then,
Yeah.
okay, so today, just a segue on AI just a little bit. So we got our new, and I think I had emailed you this, our new lab. We added onto our lab, and the temperature is like we want to control to plus or minus 1 degree. It's required by the standard.
Yeah, that's aggressive.
The
Sure.
our last temperature, the lab with the temperature, we were holding about zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 degrees on average. I mean, there
Oh
were
wow.
times at night that it would dip, and
All right.
you could walk in the
That's pretty good.
lab about any time during the day, and we would be plus or minus zero point 0.3, as long as the system was working, because then the humidifier would break, and we were pumping in water, and then it was
Mm,
about a half degree. So in any case, new
hmm.
systems in, and we're holding for some cows, and we have all these. We have Vasalos, we have heart scientific thermometers. We even have these cheap base stations, and we're monitoring this
Hmm.
stuff. And the temperature now is going from like 22 to 24, and sometimes it was dipping to 21.8 to 24.2, and then other section of the lab is not dipping as much, and this is over like a 4-hour time frame, so most of our cows
Okay.
aren't taking 4 hours.
Oh, good.
So we're
Okay.
trying to balance the system out and do everything else. But today, I can tell you that no cows going out that's worse than plus or minus 1 degree, though that variation is much more than what we saw before,
Hmm.
right? Because we were looking at, you walk in our lab, it would be 22.7 to 23.3 almost any day, right?
Okay.
And then in the winter, maybe it would drop to 22.5 to 22.8, that type of stuff. When
All
I'm
right.
saying where we were. So I'm using AI, and we're in the menu system. We're like, we have to have something. Who makes this? And it's like the name's on there, model number's not even on the control box, which was absolutely silly. So what do?
They're so
I
proud of
take
it they don't even put their name
I
on it.
I take a picture of it. It tells me AI tells me exactly what it is. I said, here's
Yeah.
what's going on. It's varying by a little more, and it started telling me what to adjust. Now, us being us,
Hmm.
I adjusted like 3 things, and then I said, well, wait a minute. We probably need to
Mm.
only adjust.
Dr. Deming would be so ashamed of you.
Yeah, yes, we probably only need to adjust one and go down. And the humidity was
Yep.
set for zero, basically 0 minutes. So we had a humidity level of 42%, and it was basically if you don't hit a humidity, it's something's going to happen with the system. And I said, let's put that to
Mm.
10 minutes. We really don't care about humidity. So that one, and then we played with the temperature piece, but we backed off the other piece. Anyway, AI told us a lot of the stuff we could do. So
Yeah.
I was not following Dr. Deming. I still changed too because I knew the humidity, the system chasing humidity. Our humidity
All right.
specification is if we try to follow the what's NCSLI say, like 40 to
Oh, they've
6.
got, is that an LM or an RP? But
It's an
yeah,
RP. I think it says
40
45 to
plus or minus 10
I think it's
or
yeah, it
40,
might be
45. Is that what it is? It's been a
45
while
plus
since I
or
read
minus
it.
45 plus or minus 10. And for what we're doing, it doesn't
Yeah.
impact our uncertainties or anything else. So um,
Okay.
that was something that is very hard to maintain it. So really, all I care about is what if we're working with electronics that things don't go under 20 because we don't want any static discharge, and we don't want it so humid that
Yeah.
anything's going to rust in the lab. So
Yeah.
really, if
And there's a
ours,
third component is like user
yeah,
comfort or something like that. But we
yeah.
don't care about the silly humans, do we?
So if NCSLI is recommending 45, really in actuality, if as long as we're not below 25 to have some room or above 55 because you don't want people above 55 is probably too anyway,
Yeah, it gets a little stuffy.
we are very lax on what I'm trying to say, very lax on the humidity. But AI immediately gave us some tools to try. So now we just
Mm-hmm.
have to grin and bear it and wait the next couple days, chart it, and then we'll just keep tweaking until we get it in. We are far way out of the point plus or minus point 0.3. I think we may get to maybe a half degree, but I don't think we're gonna with this system. But who knows? I mean, this is the thing. At least AI was giving us take a picture, and it's smart enough now. It knew the model, it knew what's in there,
Mm-hmm.
and it could give us some direction to get closer to where we need to be. Because the last thing we want is for the differential during a calibration um, to vary by more than 1 degree, plus or minus C, and have to redo the calibration because that's rework we don't want.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So
Yeah.
this probably represents not just another podcast, but an entire series,
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
entire new platform to just talk about AI in the Cal Lab.
There's a
I'm
lot. Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot, and I'm super
and we're
excited for it
slow.
too.
As a metrology community,
Yeah.
you know how slow we are to adopt things.
Well,
It takes
our
yeah.
there could be this. I'm going to do this with a half sideways wink. Some of us are probably implementing it, but we can't talk about it
Yeah. No,
just
I
because of the
get it.
proprietary nature of it.
I get it. And there's a lot of validation that needs to happen,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
right?
Hmm.
So you can run a lot of statistics, but even like running simple stuff lately, it gets messed up. It's funny because our good friend Dillip. I made him the. I'll send it to you when we're done. I should
Yeah.
post it for people to see. I have a picture of Dillip, and I was like, Dillip's a big Star Trek fan, and I was just playing with AI, put him in it, and eventually I made him a red shirt Starfleet captain with a taser and 3 phones on his belt.
Right. So you
So
generated an image of him in this.
yes,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
using AI, it looked pretty funny. The making him the red shirt one when I sent it to him, I knew he was gonna laugh because the red shirt person always got killed. You knew who was gonna get off. Oh, I'm
Yep.
red
Yep.
shirted
That's the
yet
standing
too.
joke.
So then I load a picture of my wife and I into it. I could recreate that American Gothic. The people with the pitchfork,
Yep.
that the
Yep. I stood
painting.
in front of the building. It's here in Iowa.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I go recreate this for me, and it was in the same thread. All of a sudden, American Gothic is recreated. I'm in the center holding a phaser. That's not what I asked for. So
Yeah.
it gets jumbled. What I'm saying is, and it's not there yet, and it gets jumbled a lot. And if you
But listen
load
to
a
what we're
lot,
doing, Henry.
yeah,
Listen to what we're doing. Behold, all the wonders of the universe have been centralized by the human mind to control the electron like it's never been before. I present to you AI. What do we do with it? Create some memes.
that's right. Create a red shirt Dillip.
The heck did we just do?
And then Dillip goes, can you do a Darth Vader one? And I said, I tried, and Darth Vader was copied. Lucasfilm or Disney they were not letting you.
Did you hear the amount of yeah, they wouldn't let you do it. Did you hear the amount of energy that Americans are spending on AI for just this, saying please and thank you to their AI bots is using, I don't remember the number. I want to say 100,000 megawatts of energy. It's absurd just because of processing please and thank yous on their AI chatbots. Like I said, a whole nother thread of this could be happening.
It is, and you have to create it. You have to do the things. You have to verify. It's a tool to help us. It is making us a little dumber, I think, on some things. Like I used to write everything out, and now I'm more of writing crutching AI. So I'll write obscure stuff like you and I would talk about, TAR or this, and write the whole.
Yeah.
And I think I shared a paper with you on that. I do have a paper on TAR versus TUR and some histories and how TAR got.
Maybe we need to start another episode on TAR versus TUR. Get some insider information.
We absolutely should on that. Though what I'm saying is where I use AI now is I type everything I want to say in, and then I start loading standards, and I say, go correct them, right? Yeah. Cite my sources properly. Do this.
Yep.
And it is a great tool for citing sources because that's one of the one of the workloads that I absolutely hate. Like I'll 3.7 decision rule, blah blah blah, and then I'll get it wrong, right? A word or two in there is wrong, and I'll say, hey, okay, just go. Give me the source, cite it, and then it's 2 words are wrong or whatever. But it does get jumbled. If you loaded 17025 with ILAC G8 with like ANSI Z540.3 and probably the handbook, AI would get very confused if you said, hey, make sure the decision rule definition is cited properly because it's going to have multiple definitions that are in there. Well, ILAC G8 I agree with ISO, but ANSI Z540.3 may have a little bit slightly different version of it. But we've seen this. In all cases, you just have to know the tools you're using. It's kind of like, and you've probably done this, maybe. I've done it numerous times when you're too lazy to go get the Phillips screwdriver and you have a flathead and try to use the flathead to take
or a pocket knife.
Yeah,
jam that sucker in there.
So, and then you dull your knife. But that's,
or break it.
You can do that, but you have to be careful. You really should know use the right tool for the job in that. And if you try to use the wrong tool, AI can still be there. But yeah, I was asked, so I'll present for the committee. AI is moving fast. Will we adopt it? What I hope we adopt as a community, and I think this is, you might say where BA is going or not, is that the blockchain technology, not a huge fan of cryptocurrency, though I'm a huge fan of blockchain. If we could link this, to our calibration devices, can you imagine like every cert in though the first thing we need to do is agree on this taxonomy. And I know Mike
Yep.
Schwartz was working on it. NCSLI
And
had
Mark
a
Custer.
committee.
Yeah.
Mark Custer, all these people. Let's
Yeah.
Can we just not do what we normally do? Meaning, like, I know PTB is working on it as well, and it's slightly different.
Mm.
Why can't
Hmm.
we all get together and just agree on the damn thing and just this is the standard? Not having an American taxonomy, a British
Yeah.
taxonomy, a German taxonomy, because
Boy, that's
now it
above my
doesn't.
pay grade, but you have a very, very good
Yeah,
point. The international agreements that have to be in place in order to establish something like that, like an ISO standard,
right.
I I don't know. It's above my pay grade, but to me, the more people you get in a committee, the more exponential curve it is for them to actually produce something, and the exponential curve downward on how actually usable it is.
Yeah, yeah. The I say it all the time. You know what a camel is?
Yeah. A horse
Yeah,
designed by a committee.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
It's what you got.
It's comical, but that is it. Yeah.
And I mean,
Well,
some of the committees that got it done, I think we were talking about P14 was left with what, 3 people? I'll have to at the end of it, and I like P14 is a pretty darn good document. So
that's what it needs to be. It has to be a down select of people that you can trust, that are professionals,
yeah, and then
and
you
a
have to have a
small committee of them.
good review process of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
And this is where the taxonomy, though this is ISO 10012, they're boasting that 10,000 plus people will have reviewed this or whatever the numbers. And they keep making all these tweaks and changes. And as I said, I'm not a huge
Yeah.
fan of this. I think it's going to confuse everybody. I know it's coming, and it's going to confuse people because we're not getting 17025 right with accounting for measurement uncertainty, and now we're going to put out this lesser standard that what's it mean? Because
I
I
don't
have
understand it either, to be honest with you.
if I have
Yeah.
a quality system, does that make me better than a lab that doesn't? Maybe. I mean, this is one of those obscure arguments there.
Yeah.
But,
So here's a great discussion. This all ties together. I'm going to run a thread all the way through these points.
no,
I had
good.
an interaction with one of my favorite AI bots the other day about decision rules,
Yeah.
and I was asking it about a certain incident that happened in Washington D.C. several months ago. You remember where that airliner was coming in on final approach and it struck the helicopter.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was able to ask it what the accuracy rating was of each of the aircraft altimeters, and then back at the next level of the air data test sets that are then used to calibrate the altimeters on the flight line. I have some experience with those. So I kind of went in knowing what right questions to ask, and I asked it, so tell me the risk associated if those instruments were calibrated per 17025 and then per Z540.3 and then Z540.1. I asked it what each of the risk levels were associated with that. And it reported back that 17025 would have been a better standard and represented a lower risk. And I said, oh, is that a matter of fact? So doesn't that depend on the decision rule used? And I was basically backing the bot into a corner. That's not quite the right way to describe it. I was educating it.
Right.
Because the AI bot knew 17025 and it kind of knew what a decision rule is, but it didn't understand that the application of different decision rules gets you very different risk levels. By the end of the conversation, I asked it again, now which one represents a lower risk? And it said, well, Z540.3 actually represents the lower risk because it controls it to a 2% PFA and blah, blah, blah. Z17025 would be a much greater risk because it doesn't explicitly control measurement decision risk. So after some training there, now how well does that stick? I don't know, but that I think is a good usage of the AI tools for us, would it not be? So let me tie this in. You were talking about why can't we just have this blockchain? I agree, and I think that would be a pie in the sky idea of I send my instrument in, let's say it's a digital multimeter, and it's got an embedded personality module, and it knows who it belongs to, and it can tell whoever plugs it in that this is the decision rule that you need to use when you calibrate me, and it feeds that into the automation system. And then when it's done, the cal report is then stored on the unit. I bring it back into my lab, and it's all right there on the dang instrument. This isn't my idea, by the way. I totally stole this from the workings of NCSLI from several years ago, that this was an idea that they had on the table. I don't know how realistic it is, to be honest with you, though.
I don't know.
What do you think?
All I know is shipping documents We used to ship everything I know
Yeah.
blockchain is used, and now they just scan a code instead of paperwork after paperwork that you were paying somebody a fortune, right? And there were a lot of delays. So you can fast track processes. If I had all that working data of this instrument and some lab said it failed calibration, I could go
Hmm.
back. You could do all kinds of analytics and everything else and say, look, Travis, I think even though we're saying this failed, the what's showing in the past is such that I don't think we're right with this assumption, or that our risk level is much lower than what we're presenting to you. Would be probably the better
Yeah.
scenario. It's like,
If
right,
and so you're saying that's contingent on being able to see all of the previous calibration measurements. Is
right,
that right? And their
yeah.
associated uncertainties.
Yeah, and you might need to have some other things in there too, like there's probably going to track the output of it, and the
Okay.
history, and for like a load cell, maybe the
Yeah.
zero. You start getting into diagnostic mode, which is always fun. Like my son's air conditioner wasn't working yesterday, and diagnostic mode first is like, let's tear everything apart.
Oh, you guys
Well,
are in a heat wave, aren't you?
yeah, we're in a heat wave. But what
Yeah, I
ended
heard
up
about that.
being when he brought out this CO2 gun that he said he used to clean his drain, uh, a, about 5 seconds from there, it was okay. So where'd all that stuff go? Well, it went all over the place. It came out of the unit, and I said, well, there's this pipe that drains down here. So we pulled the pipe up, and all the gunk was down there blocking the drainage. So instead of ripping everything apart when you actually investigated, it was a 5-minute fix to figure out, let's get the shop vac out, put it over the hole, suck all that
And
crap out.
blast the
Yeah.
gunk out. Okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
those lesson learned is those CO2 guns to clean your drain, push all that crap somewhere else and can clog it downstream. So I still
And that's
uh,
why the air conditioner wasn't working, is because its drain was also clogged.
the drain
Was
on the
that
air conditioner was absolutely
the
clogged.
condensate? Yeah.
It wasn't keeping up because it was hot, so he blew it out. And when he blew it, it was already, and since all that gunk was already in there, was why the condensate wasn't keeping up, but it was working. And then it got
Mm-hmm.
worse and flooded when he blew it out because he created a barrier
Yep.
where it could not drain. Once
York,
we,
PA, extreme heat warning today, 92 degrees, feels like
oh yeah,
100.
yes, and our air's out today too, so it's like
Oh,
oh,
snap.
it's all right.
Sorry, man.
I'm at work. I'm at work where I'm freezing because people keep it cold. So at least it's not the dimensional lab. I don't know how those technicians live at 20 degrees all day long.
I don't
20
either. Our lab
23
sits at
is
23 and I still wear a long sleeve shirt all the time.
yeah, 23 is about the okay. It's comfortable, right?
Yep.
20 is only good if you have like a cold beverage, right? Because it takes it a lot longer. No, back tying everything in, like I said, this
Sure. Where are we
conversation,
going with this?
we can talk about anything. Where we're going is your paper's fantastic. People aren't adhering to the standard. You are specifically following the standard as a requester of calibration to the labs, and they're ignoring what you're seeing or what you're requesting, and that's in
Yeah.
violation of the standard. There's no other
Sometimes
way to.
ignorantly ignoring it, but some ignorantly
Yeah,
ignoring double negative, but sometimes on purpose. Yeah.
and this happens, and we both understand. So
Yeah.
hopefully the ILAC G8 committee. You mentioned method 6. To me, there's two decision rules. You
Really?
could say
Yeah. Which
there's
ones do you like?
only two. Is I like method 5 or the ILAC
G8 2009
G8
rule. It's the same
2009
thing.
rule.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing. The
It's
one
so,
gives you a
for
little
those just
more.
tuning in, it's you just simply shrink the guard band by the amount of uncertainty, right? That's
Yep.
basically how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, at a 95%
The U
confidence.
95% guard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The other one, the method 5, I
6.
believe, or no, Method 5 is very similar, and ANSI Z540.3 is very simple is similar to the
Oh,
ILAC
yeah,
G8
yeah. It's just,
rule.
mhm.
It's just you're shrinking it by I think it's 2.245 because they use k equals 2. So instead of 1.96, it's They use 95.
They use a U95, which is
they
a
use U95. I believe U95.45.
sure
Anyway, they line up.
small differences between them,
Small,
but
who
it's the same
cares? They're
principle. It's
virtually
easy
the
to
same.
do.
And then there's
Yeah,
another document that says it's actually 95. So I'm
yeah,
lost. If you ask me what method 5 was at any given time, I could either say it's 95% or it's 95
that's fine.
point. But anyway, in method 6.
95.45.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and
just to
method
drive a
6.
few more nails in this coffin, the reason I know this is an issue, and I'm not just an alarmist, is because I run across this so frequently. Like I I give free consulting to a lot of labs, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but
No, I know
when and I'll go back to that Torque example, that international
we
company I spoke of that has 60,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
That international company with 60,000 freaking employees didn't know how to guard band.
No.
They had to go to their consultant to tell them what's wrong with my uncertainty. How do I even guard band? I started to have a conversation with them and they didn't know what a guard band was. So part of that is shame on them. Part of that is shame on their accreditation body. How do they walk into this standard, get a piece of paper on the wall, and not know how to make a decision rule? I mean, this is just this is a huge problem, and
because you have
that much I know.
You have somebody that's probably there for 2 days just random sampling, and it's part of the checklist. I know it is. I don't know who they're accredited by.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, but it's one of the big ones.
NavLab and A2, that's why we have dual accreditation. Like we just went through our NavLab audit. We had one deficiency, and and our deficiency, I believe, was we didn't up on our documents. We had the old NavLab checklist and not the newer one. They released the newer one, and it's little things, but then little things can lead to bigger problems. So you always want to be continuously improving and whatnot. But yeah,
absolutely.
If we could just, and I want to clarify, I like when I say there should only be 2 decision rules, I mean in general guidance. If we're instructing, like you're consulting labs, if they don't have a clue, just be able to implement these 2, right? Because RDS I actually like RDS better than
I do too. 6. I think it's good.
Except for Paul Reese did the paper that said, hey, if we use method 6 and you have a 4.6 to 1 TUR, your PFA is always going to be less than 2, no matter if you have the worst end of period reliability in the world. So it really simplifies the math end of things for me, and that's what we should all be about, right? If you want to use Bayesian statistic modeling and you want to take all your sample, your end of period reliability, if you want to do that, go for it, right? If you want to use all those other methods, do it.
So this is part of another problem. I think we, as the metrology community, have overcomplicated a lot of things. Yes. And I'm starting to call myself the practical metrologist. I think I'll change my LinkedIn title. Because a lot of this is just simply, thank you. I'll give that a shot after. Tell me when this podcast drops, and I'll change my LinkedIn title. The practical metrologist. I need a picture with a cigar or something. Hey, AI can generate that now. Anyway,
yes, it can.
So we have to have something that's usable, that's workable, and can be understood by the masses. And I'm not sure that we're quite there yet.
We're not.
There is a lot to uncertainty, and I don't understand it all. I've mentioned that already. I'm not a professional statistician, but I've read enough of the standards and the handbook to know that these things really do matter, and we need a simple way of implementing it. And there's that famous quote out there. I use this in a lot of my presentations. So Dr. Kastrup was on the phone with Jerry Hayes, and they were talking about the 4-to-1 TAR. Yeah. Yep. And he said, I can't believe they're still using that old TAR rule. And Dr. Kastrup's comment is, well, that was a risk patch that was put in when they didn't have sufficient computing power. Now that we have sufficient computing power, let's do all the measurement uncertainties, and it's fairly easy and straightforward to implement. And I think that is still a caution for us today. And this phone call took place in like 2007, I think, somewhere in there. It was quite a while ago. Back when, I don't remember, what kind of computer did you have in 2007? The smartphones weren't even out yet, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I think the iPhone was just coming out.
I want to say 08 was the iPhone.
Maybe. I flipped
the first
phones.
One.
Everyone wanted that.
The Motorola Razr?
Razr. Yeah, Motorola Razr was the.
Yeah, that was pretty fly. So
Yeah,
computers have gotten even better, and good grief, we now even have AI to throw at it, and it's just we're so much further down the road, but
we are.
it has to be practical. We have to be able to use this down here in the trenches. I still do calibrations. That's the cool thing about working in a small lab. I get my hands dirty, and so I get to do some calibrations once in a while, and I don't know, it keeps my muscle memory going, and it keeps me remembering this is where I came from. This is what we have to keep in mind. And then I'll tie this off. I don't know if we're wandering too far off the trail here. You can edit the time frame, I guess. But
Yeah.
you were talking about keeping. You were referencing a book about your viewpoint.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah, John Berger, Ways of Seeing, I think it was called.
Yeah. So in my presentation last week, I was up at the Twin Cities section meeting for NCSLI, and I presented my white paper from 2024 in its expanded version because it's pretty cool. You get like 45 minutes instead of 10 or whatever the small time frame is.
Right.
And I said this, we stress a lot about the traceability chain, right? You can define traceability. It's that unbroken chain of measurements, each adding to the uncertainty.
Documented unbroken chain of calibration. Each
a documented unbroken chain.
To the measurement uncertainty.
Yeah. Why don't we ever talk about the strength of that chain? Why don't we ever talk about where the beginning and the end link is? We know what the beginning link is. It's the SI units. That's easy.
Yeah,
where's that end link? Do you fly, Henry?
Yeah.
That's an end link. I buy product. I buy medical products. I buy computers. I buy cars. Those are the end chain in your measurement. I think a lot of third-party labs might lose sight of that. Kind of just doing that daily processing. My measurement here, I send the instrument out. I take a measurement here, I send my instrument out. It has to be more than that. We have to have this end-to-end view. And I told them, let's do this. So in your mind, hang an aircraft by that chain. Is it strong enough? What if I took out one of those links and put in a paper clip? Are you going to get on board that aircraft? Do you see what I'm saying now? Again, not to be an alarmist, but this is the job that we metrologists have to do. We have to ensure the strength of that traceability chain.
Very good. And there's a Netflix documentary that should still be out, regardless of when this podcast is. People view it or listen to it. It's called Titan. It's about the Titan submarine. One of the best documentaries I've seen, because I've read a lot of the research and they did a lot of testing on this harbor. Long story short, it's a submarine that was designed to go deep sea diving, and the main thing was to go see the Titanic, and it crushed they were about halfway down and it crushed. But they're showing University of Washington, they're showing tests that they were doing and it popping and all this other stuff, and of course it was not safe. But what ends up happening here, and I think it's a good lesson that everybody should learn, is maybe you get away with it a couple times, right? Maybe that airplane takes off and you get your flight at 7 a.m. lands. The next flight, maybe not so much, right? So there is a failure. There is safety designed in all these things, and I don't want people to think airplanes are going to crash out of the sky because they're incredibly
I know
safe.
this is a fine point to walk. So I'm trying to raise the alarm, but not be an alarmist.
So eventually there's a fail point, and if somebody didn't do something correctly, calculations get skewed. So if somebody makes the decision to push, well, we don't have this available, and we can push a little bit past, our safety margins. I'm going to make up a number. Our safety margin's 20. We'll just put and we're at, the engineers have calculated failure at 25. Do we push to 21 to get that extra flight? These are the things that, this is where it bites you. It typically won't bite you on the, because there's enough safety built in. But if somebody makes a decision based on calculations and everything else, and some piece of that chain wasn't right, their decision is making the assumption that it was. And that's typically where you get into problems.
And does the Cal Lab really want to come back? Does the Cal Lab really want to come back and say, well, the customer didn't tell us the risk they needed, so we just flagged everything as pass indeterminate or pass conditional.
I don't love this.
We just returned it because it's not our fault. We're shared risk. You see, we're just sharing the risk.
Yeah,
I
it's a
could go on and
tough.
on about that, but
Well, that's a tough situation because I've changed my viewpoint a little bit on this. I don't like,
yeah.
I get indeterminate pass fail. I really conditional pass fail. I get it. It's and the only reason I get it is because customers aren't really good, in my opinion. With you would be the exception because you actually report the decision rule. They basically come in. A lot of people, I'm assuming in industry, get please perform a calibration in accordance with ISO IEC 17025 or
Hmm. And that's all they
criteria,
say.
and that's all they say.
Yep.
So at
It's
that
not enough.
point, if you are using, if we fail it, if we assume the worst, a conservative model on specific risk and fail it, though it would pass for you and you have history on global risk, this is where I get into
Hmm.
like, it's hard to the it's hard to say it fails unless you give me criteria for it to fail. Now, at some
Okay,
point,
but
everything
why
fails.
call it pass obscure objective adjective?
I just
You
call
know.
we call it we give it a asterisk. So our and we may redo this. I've been thinking a lot about it, but if if it passes method 5 uncertainty taken into account, you get a pass. Between method 5 and method 6, so to say, you get an asterisk. And then you get a fail if it's above method 6.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
tolerance limit.
just an asterisk, nothing else around it, in front of it, before it.
No, no,
Yeah. So
no.
that asterisk then notifies the customer, hey, you should look into this a little further.
Yeah,
This
it
represents a risky test point.
could be.
I, I
Or
really
there
respect that. Yeah.
there might be no risk to them. Absolutely not. They could have
Yeah.
a bunch of data, they could have everything else. This might not just be a
Yep.
one-off, It's running a Cal Lab's difficult in the fact that if we have these cool AI systems and everything else, we could start running probabilities and using all the statistics. But typically people are paying us to look at something under a defined window and report what the results are under that window. We're not seeing how it's being used. We're not seeing the repeated testing or frequency of those tests. We're not seeing somebody throw it on the ground, like we say, oops, dropped it. We're not
Mhm.
seeing the mishandling. All we're seeing is a very really fraction of that's life under a microscope when we're doing a calibration, where
Yep.
we can make a determination based on the evidence that we have at the time. And we don't have it all. Maybe if we had the
Yeah.
blockchain technology, we'd have a whole bunch more of it. And
Yep. The pie in the sky
like,
solution.
yeah, pie in the
Then you can
sky.
maybe do your job. Yeah.
Maybe it would be a lot better. But yeah, it's difficult telling someone it fails, and it's
It is.
difficult knowing that the mechanical interactions of everything are such like yeah. So what happens in the airplane if somebody doesn't apply enough torque? Well, there's several other bolts there, so hopefully your door doesn't blow off, right? But if they
Just to use
don't
a
apply,
random example.
yeah, if they don't apply enough torque to all of those and use the bad wrench there, then that you could
Hmm.
have problematic. Or if somebody, I think a lot of this, it's too.
That wasn't
We'll
it.
end.
So
Yeah,
that incident was, they didn't conclude anything on that, did they? Like
I
why
don't
the door
believe
blew
so.
off?
It
I
wasn't
didn't look up
torque.
what the latest was on
I
it.
believe that they thought the torque. I don't think it was a bad. Um, I might get it wrong, but I don't. From what I know, I don't think it was a bad measurement. I think it was somebody
Okay.
that didn't come back in and do a verification. So,
All right.
which brings us
Fair
to the
enough.
point. You have a bunch of things. You have a bunch. You have the calibrated instrument, and then you have people. Most of the time, we're not AI
Hmm.
yet, and robots aren't doing this. And guess what? If I'm Travis or I'm me and I'm doing calibrations all day and I do a 12-hour shift, or I know some people or they work a 20-hour shift, by the end of the 20 hours, you're really feeling pretty tired,
Wow.
right? In
20 hours
general.
for real?
The most I've done is 14, but I'm just being, surgeons catheterize themselves to do tricky surgeries. I mean,
Oh, that I never knew.
yeah, some of them have if it's going to be a
Wow.
large surgery. But I know somebody that sat
Hmm.
on a test bench for like 3 days straight, right? And the thing is, eventually you get worn out. So you have to refresh. And if you're not engaged, which is our bigger problem, I think, with society, is a lot of people just come in and the companies they work for, they just do the same thing every day. Like, I'm just going to hook these test leads up to this. I'm going to make a measurement. And they might as well be a robot, right?
Hmm.
They're not going to detect, they're not paying attention to things. They're completely disengage, and it's so important to get people that care about what they're doing making that measurement. And if you
Yeah.
don't have that, that's where I'm calling that engagement, but it's technician engagement, because you and I
Technician engagement.
probably
Hmm.
care. I mean, if I'm at the end
Oh,
of the
very much so.
day, I care. I can tell you where my bias is. I talked about it with Ryan Kelly on this. Is there's some people that when it's on the line will call it out, and there's some people that'll call it in.
Oh, yeah, if it's right at tolerance.
Right at tolerance.
All
Yeah.
right.
So I one of the things to say, how difficult is it to adjust the instrument might be one of your criteria.
That
If
could be
you
one of the
really
criteria.
if you really care, and your value is such that I can't have somebody else using this at tolerance, I'm going to adjust it, then you're going to do it all day long. I did it all. There was only ever one manufacturer that I wouldn't do it for, and then I would call it in because they we not enough time in this discussion, but
Mhm.
manufacturers that way use a specification that they will probably, as Dilip said, achieve once is known to say, achieve
Oh,
once,
never
never
repeated.
repeated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, how did they get this number? But yeah,
Hmm.
fortunately with us, I cared enough that I called the customer on some of those, and they actually raised their tolerance then. So the end of the story was good. I'm like,
Good.
this is on the line. I can't get it any better. I've tried for 4 hours. Oh, we only
Mhm.
need it to be 1% and not 0.5. And you're like, okay, I think that, or 0.2. We only need it 0.2 instead of 0.1. And you're like, well, then it's in.
Mhm. There you go. A little bit of relief, huh?
But it's hard. Like I said, that's why
Yeah.
resolution comes into play. They always say, what's the difference between you and I? If we're both skilled operators and we're going to measure a part using a micrometer and we're both awesome at it, the only thing different between you and I is what? The resolution of that instrument, right?
Hmm.
What we're going to call it.
If yeah, yeah.
Because it's going to be within it, right? And you might call something 100.1, I might call it 100. If the
Okay.
resolution's that
Yep.
great,
If the resolution is the only variable, sure.
Yep. So anyway, well, hey,
Well, I'm a big
yeah,
fan of taking this to practical matters, right? A lot of
yeah,
discussion points. What is the big takeaways here? So if I could tie a bow on it, this is where I'm coming from.
yeah.
I point my guns at everybody in the room. When I presented this at the section meeting last week, and even last year at the conference. So where do we go from here? Number one is the customers. That's the people that are writing the requirements. They're writing the request for quotes. We have to have decision rules,
Yep.
and we have to communicate those to our Cal labs. Don't just say, give me a 17025 Cal. That is not enough. You're going to get a big, risky, variable bag of crap.
Maybe.
And if that's
Depending.
all you do,
Yes, your risk level
risky.
is high. It's
You're going to get a big, risky bag
can
of
be.
something.
Can be.
uh, Review your certificates. So there's this article that the FDA Silver Sheet put out, I want to say 2010, and I totally stole it off Paul Reese's presentation from many years ago too. And they warned people that about 90% of Cal labs are not reviewing their calibration certificates. They get it back from the lab, they put it in the file drawer, right?
Yep.
Or the database, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody keeps hard copies anymore. And so when I presented that last week at the conference, one of the assessors in the front row said, ha ha, more like 98%, Travis. So remember, 70% of statistics are made up on the spot. Review your certificates.
Yep.
And then I also say, if you find issues, start filing complaints. If I'm the only one making noise, then the rest of the world looks good, right? Now, don't push the atomic button for every little nit, right? You can work out some things with your Cal lab before you go to the complaint process. But if we don't fix this systemically, then we're still going to get risky cows across the industry. So don't be afraid to do that.
Definitely have the open discussion with your Cal lab, because that's where everything should happen. And if they're a good Cal lab, they should be receptive, and that discussion should be very good. And maybe they'll help you, right? There are situations where, why are you asking for this? And you decide, well, I really don't need it. So a quick example would be, you ask me for something and you say, I want it to 0.2%. And I go, why do you really want 0.2? Well, the specification here says we need it to be 0.1%. But I thought, I looked at the manufacturer's stuff and I root sum squared everything, and I think you guys can do O2 for us and not the
Oh yeah,
0.1%. You know, you
we'll
have,
flex on that too. We as
yeah,
a customer will flex on those. Yeah,
yeah,
if we
and
can, what we call cal limit something, we'll definitely
yeah.
exercise that where it's feasible. Yeah.
So you want, because it impacts you more too. If you want to hold the tightest spec, gets your probability of it being out of spec goes up. It's just
Yeah.
natural, right?
And I think there's rare instances that you do need that tolerance
There
that you have
might
to hold
be,
to.
though. If general, your whole system is predicated based on 0.1, why would you ask for O2? Right?
Yeah.
And that's a discussion you and your Cal lab may have. And maybe you need O2. I'm not saying
But
you
the
don't. I'm just saying that's a discussion that should be had.
yeah, and this example that you gave here isn't really an example of where the standard is violated though, right?
No, it's not violated
If you're
at
going to
all
use
then. Yeah, no.
yeah, if you're going to use the simple decision rule and completely ignore uncertainty, I push back on that all the time.
Yep.
Even though
And
it's an ILAC G8, remember G8 is a guidance document, and it also doesn't say that you can do that if you read it explicitly. So anyway, I'm going to turn my guns over to the Cal Labs too now, and this is third-party commercial Cal Labs and OEMs for providing it. So the first thing I say is review your purchase orders, right? That's where I put my language. This is our mechanism for communicating with you. Rob Kanacki, in an article back in, I want to say 2016, 2017, it made the front cover of the NCSLI magazine. It was a picture of two trees exchanging leaves. Kind of a cool graphic, but he was also saying that same thing. We have to talk to each other. The communication has to be there. What are your expectations, and what can the Cal Lab do? And if that communication, if that contract review process isn't happening, then we've got another risky calibration on the line.
That's right. And on that side, I want to keep going with this, though. Make your purchase order simple. Do not bury that you want the decision rule on page 29 of your purchase order.
Okay, that's fair. Yep.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, everything, these big organizations, it should be on page 1 or 2 and called out. The rest of the stuff is what I call boilerplate. Every single time, you need to adhere to this or this guidance.
Payment and
everything that's
so that's back on us.
Yeah.
We're a big organization. Our POs aren't simple, and I get it. Yeah. We actually refer to an internal document that you have to go through our portal to pull up with all the legal T's and C's on it. That's unfortunate, but it's
fine for legal stuff, but it's not fine for listing your actual. I need you to calibrate the device. I want measurement uncertainty to be accounted for. I want you to use method 6.
That's where we have that. That language is on the front sheet of the
7, and it should be. But people bury it. They bury this stuff like page 27 in, and large language models are much better than I am. You put it in there, and it knows what you're gonna need. It'll pull it. But if I'm a person reading this and I have to read these all day, you need a special person, and they're gonna miss something at some point because
you're right. It's the people variable.
And the people variable. Machines not, because the machine will scan it in seconds.
Yep.
But what else?
So the other thing is, if ILAC G8 really is going to clarify what the simple decision rule is, then the Cal Labs need to start getting out of this now. I've talked to a couple of them now where I asked them across the table, how is this going to impact you if that ill-defined simple decision rule goes away tomorrow? And it was a little bit of, a look of panic, like, yeah, that's going to hurt. Get in front of it now. Start getting a decision rule that complies with 70225 where you don't ignore uncertainty.
And you need it. And method 6 is super easy. There's enough stuff out there. If you don't know anything else, method 5 or method 6 or the ILAC G8 2009, we might as well just stay with ANSI Z540.3 handbook and say method 5 or method 6 is so you either do the global or specific risk. Whatever your risk tolerance is, specific risk would be method 5, global would be method 6. Those are the two that are highly recommended if you don't know anything else you're doing, and probably going to satisfy 99% of anybody out there wanting calibration.
Yeah.
The other one.
So there's also there's a tutorial coming up, right?
Yep.
At NCSLI this year, which this podcast is going to drop after that, but it's an ongoing thing that you and I don't know if you team up all the time with Greg Senker on it, but you've got that decision rule.
Yep.
tutorial that you guys put on, I think that's fabulous. It's a great starting point. Education, start taking in that material for the third-party Cal Labs. Yeah.
All the math is there, and if you can't attend that, we did a document that it's all in there. It's written at the intermediate level. We were going for beginner, but
yeah, it's hard to do, isn't it?
Well, Klaus got me. He's like, your mind is, and like these podcasts, I go over like a little bit here and there, and he's like, just stick on topic. And it's like, well, how do you? Our topic's decision rule, but how do you have decision rule unless we start going into all the convoluted
measurement decision risk, conformity statement, measurement uncertainty,
and uncertainty? So you can't. If we just talked about method 5 and method 6, it feels not enough to not discuss how measurement uncertainty. So the labs really need to get their uncertainty. Regardless, this first step is to get your measurement uncertainties process gone over and get your uncertainties cleaned up. And that's what
I'd like to think that's already. Is it really?
No, they struggle with it. And then after measurement uncertainty's done, measurement decision rules, if you're going to do method 5 or 6, it's the easiest thing. It's just a freaking formula.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I've got an easier way out yet, but that's at another podcast.
Yeah. So Travis,
accreditation bodies, the next one, accreditation bodies, they've got to start enforcing every line of that 70025. Right now, if you review CalCerts and it says they're accredited to 70025 and they made a non-binary conformity statement, and they also say this is in compliance with Z540-1, it's actually not in compliance.
Nope.
So we have to start enforcing every line of those standards. I'll just leave it at that. The last is I'm going to pull an NCSLI. I think they can do a lot to help us develop a standard. And I'm really advocating for a standard, not a guidance, not a handbook, a standard that controls this. Why can't we have Z540.4 that lists a small number of decision rules? 2, 3.
Yep.
That's it. And then it says, now go do your calibrations in accordance with 70025, and all that quality management stuff is over there as well. But a standard for us high risk industries, right now we don't have that. Excuse me. And that I think is really missing, because that's what controls the quality of our calibration, right? And if you don't have a standard that controls that, how are you supposed to attain it?
Yep. So great points. And Z540. You know what we see a lot with Z540.3 really ticks me off. We don't see it as much because it's kind of phased out, but we used to see it, and it used to get mad all the time. I want a cal in compliance with Z540.3. Well, where's your recal date? What do you mean recal? Well, the required Z540 says you shall
provide your recalibration date.
Me the date as a cal lab to put on your sticker and your equipment. And they're like, what? And it's like, so understand.
And there's multiple ways of complying with the decision rule in there too.
Yeah,
right?
There is, because it's all about controlling the risk, and that's what they have. But again, I mean, we get it. Things are changing. It's all positive, and all I can say is thank you for bringing this up. Thank you for your presentations. And if people don't, I was in the room. So what? If people don't agree, we're a community, and we should all bring these things to light.
Yeah. And there were there was 2 polarized responses last year at the conference, just for those who were wondering. One person said, and I quote, "Travis, everything you said is wrong." Another person said, and I quote, "Travis, I agree with everything you just said." Yeah. So am I in the middle? I think I'm somewhere in there. It's a worthwhile conversation to start having. I'm hard to offend. If people disagree with any of the merits of my material, let's talk about it. I'm absolutely open to that.
It's viewpoints, though. I mean, and the one person that could say you're completely wrong could be dealing with, thousands upon thousands of instruments, and they know exactly what's going on in their organization, where somebody else is there, and it's like, no, we're just looking at this under the microscope, and I haven't seen all this. It's, again, I go back to that ways of saying, because it's what we know, and the nuclear submarine latch person.
And I understand. I have one perspective here, but I just want these conversations out there. Because of those 3 primary points that I mentioned earlier. So thank you again for having me on the podcast here to keep these conversations alive and going, and hopefully catch a little more awareness.
Yeah, hopefully people find it entertaining and listen to it, and they can, I like where you went, and they can make a difference. They can.
I hope so too.
make sure their PO language is on the first line. They can start getting their measurement uncertainties in order. They can have the decisions, or not decisions, discussions with their teams on, hey, we
Yeah.
need to put in place a method to start implementing these decision rules and do better by our
Hmm.
customers. So uh, all that stuff is possible. So yeah, I
I think so
cannot
too.
thank you enough. So thank you, Travis.